Hello, everyone. Welcome. Still got some folks trickling in. I'm gonna wait a couple more seconds, then get started. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so we still have, looks like lots of people coming in, but I'm just gonna get started because we only have 30 minutes today. So thank you all for joining this team lead training. So grateful to have all of you here and for your interest in volunteering with us and taking your activism to the next level. I'm Amanda. I'm our head of operations at TFC. It's my job to make sure that all of our programs run smoothly and that our volunteers and campaigns have a great experience with us. I'm joined by Patrick McNally, our recruiting and ops manager. He'll be in the chat answering questions, responding to stuff, and please do feel encouraged to ask questions either in the chat or using the Q&A feature, and we will get to them as we go. And then, of course, joined by all of you, our hopefully future TFC team leads. Again, just so grateful that all of you could be here and excited to chat today. So this session is going to cover a quick overview on just TFC in general. So if you volunteered with us before, this will be more of a review for you. And then after that, we'll get into the team lead role and things that you need to know as a potential team lead. Like I said, as we go, feel free to ask any questions. So I want to start by just talking about the main components of the TFC model. So first is world-class tech volunteers like all of you who are fired up about actually making an impact on American politics, which, as I'm sure you all know, is so needed right now. And then another aspect of our model that not everyone realizes when they first sign up with TFC is that we focus exclusively on mostly state legislative candidates, some other down ballot candidates as well, but we focus on local races for a very intentional reason, which I'll talk about next. And so our mission is to bring together these two groups, people who are brilliant and experts in their field and candidates who really need that level of expertise, and bring them together in a way that is data-driven and proven to really move the needle in terms of electoral outcomes and helping Democrats win. So why do we focus on state legislative and down ballot races? So for us, state races don't really get even a fraction of the resources and media attention that national races do, which just doesn't make sense to us. When you think about political news these days, reproductive rights, book bans, mass shootings, the place where you can actually make a change, a significant change in this type of legislation and do it quickly and effectively is in the states. And we're seeing a lot of momentum in terms of focus there, but we are focused on kind of bolstering that even more and getting a lot of focus and resources to the states where it's actually going to make our lives different. So what are those programs? So we're fighting back in the states. What are we focusing on? So TFC runs a lot of different types of digital programs, from organic social media, data analysis, all kinds of things. But today, I want to just quickly go over our most common types of programs so that everyone is aware of them. And those are building websites for candidates, running their performance marketing, so their paid digital ads, mostly on Facebook and Google, and then email marketing, which is mostly focused on fundraising, but has some other initiatives thrown in there as well. So websites, so this is building websites for candidates. We're kind of nearing the end of website season. most of our candidates have their websites built and they're kind of tweaking them at this point, but we do still have some remaining ones trickling in. And these are usually 4 to 5 weeks, 5 to 7 hours a week for all team members. So that's a team lead, front-end engineer, designer, and a copywriter. All those people, usually an average of 5 to 7 hours a week for that time. And the goal is just to build a high-performing website that candidates can link to in their various marketing programs. And then another type of project that we're kind of not in this season yet, but it's about to come and it'll come very fast, is digital marketing, so ads projects. This is mostly on Facebook and Google, but also other platforms, connected TV. Right now, we're looking into doing some work on Hulu and iHeartRadio and things like that. So just paid marketing, and the goals of this vary depending on where you are in your cycle. But these projects go in 8-week phases. So when you're a volunteer, you commit to 8 weeks, 5 to 7 hours a week. That's the case for pretty much all team members. For the team leads, it sometimes can be a little bit more than that for like the first week as you're getting started, and then it kind of evens out. And over the course of the ads project, you will optimize for visibility, awareness, persuasion, and then closer to the election, getting voters actually out to vote, to get out the vote efforts. Ads teams have a team lead, a performance marketer, and a graphic designer. And then lastly, email projects. So email projects happen all year round. We have tons listed on our website right now that are open and you can apply for, and Patrick will share the link to that page in the chat. These are kind of the same thing as ads projects. They're 8-week phases. So you sign up for 8 weeks and they'll continue. Phases will continue until election day. So one project can have several phases. You can just do one of those, or you can sign up all the way to support the candidate to election day and really go deep on that campaign. And email projects, like I said, are primarily focused on fundraising, but also on getting your constituents out to an event, building rapport with your list, things like that. And email projects have the team lead, an email marketer, who's kind of like a copywriter, and then a data analyst. So those are our core types of programs. Like I said, we have other ones too. So if you are looking at these and you're thinking my skill set isn't exactly, I'm not an expert in any one of these, that's okay. One, because we have other ones, but two, because we found that team leads can be really successful on these types of projects from a lot of different types of backgrounds. And the most important thing for team leads is that you can lead people and keep people organized. It's not necessarily that you need to be an expert on your project type, and we'll talk about that more now. So yeah, let's talk about team leads. Team leads are kind of the engine between TFC's model. When you think about it, we're doing something that's really kind of crazy and ambitious. We're doing hardcore digital consulting, all from volunteers. And there are a lot of people and resources and work that needs to be coordinated to make that happen. And team leads are the people that make that possible. So internally, they're the engine that keeps the volunteer team coordinated, motivated, excited. And then they also are the liaison between TFC and that volunteer team and the campaign. And I'll start by just laying out some of the resources that we offer to team leads, so and to all volunteers. So we like to think that our docs are pretty great. We always accept feedback on them, but all major roles have a welcome document with most of the things that you will need to get ramped up in your role. And then for team leads in particular, we also have things like draft agendas for your kickoff and your check-in meetings so that you kind of know what you need to cover there and how those should be run. We also have a lot of examples of different types of work that TFC teams have done in the past, and also a guide on just the basics of politics that you may need to know as a team lead on a volunteer team. In terms of tools, our docs are in Slab. All those documents are in a tool called Slab. It's kind of like Notion. Our main communication tool is Slack. So each volunteer team has a dedicated Slack channel for them to communicate asynchronously, figure out what they need to do, check in on status of the project. And then there's also other channels, like for your state, there might be one that you can ask questions about politics that are going on in that state. There's also some for like all email projects. So if you're on an email team, you can get thoughts from other volunteer teams about a challenge or an idea that you might have. And then you also have people. So as a team lead, while you are the person that's kind of responsible for driving these projects, you are certainly not alone in doing that. So every project, every team lead is assigned a TFC state director that will kind of be like your TFC point of contact, and they will attend most of your meetings, internal and with the campaign. If you get blocked by something that you're unable to unblock yourself, they are there to help you. If you run into a challenge, whether it's about the work itself, having trouble meeting one of the benchmarks that we put in place, or with a volunteer who is maybe confused or not holding their weight, they're there to kind of help you think through how to navigate those challenges. And then if you are brand new to volunteering with TFC, you will also have a 15-minute call with someone who has been in your role many times before, just to go over the super basics, make sure you have access to everything, and then give you a chance to ask any quick questions. So yeah, you'll have that as you get started as well. So you'll have these resources. Then with all of these things, what are your responsibilities as team lead? So there's kind of 3 buckets that we'll talk about. And the first one is communication. So each week, so you'll have in your first week of a project, you'll have 2 kickoff calls, one internal with the volunteer team and your state director, one external with all of those people and the campaign. And you'll lead all of those meetings. And then you will also lead communication in weekly meetings for both of those, continuing throughout the project. So you'll lead those meetings. In them, you'll talk about the status of deadlines of the work that you're doing, look at data from previous weeks and how you may need to iterate, things like that. And then also asynchronous communication in between those meetings. So checking in and making sure that, okay, we assign this action item, are we actually making progress on that? So leading communication there too. Also emailing back and forth for approvals and such with the campaign. So asynchronous communication. And then the second bucket is just keeping the team organized. So at the beginning of the project, you'll create some sort of tracker. And then so throughout the project, you will be responsible for making sure that the team is sticking to the plan, that people are clear on what their roles and responsibilities are, when they need to do things, what those things are. And then also keeping any like testing or iterations and the findings from that documented and shared with TFC, where especially this cycle, we have a big focus on cross-project A/B testing. So as a project, you may be a part of a larger initiative to better understand what digital strategies work and don't. And then the last kind of bucket of responsibility that I would say is the most important and also can be the most challenging, I think, is the people leadership aspect. So leading the volunteer team and maintaining a sense of urgency. when I think about my job and what I love about it, one of the coolest things is just how much enthusiasm volunteers have to make an impact. Volunteers come on these projects and they are raring to go, and they really, you know, their hearts are absolutely in the right place. But with that being said, and a lot of them continue that as they go. With that being said, especially, you know, email and ads projects, these are longer phases. These are 8 weeks, and sometimes, you know, campaigns might not have the same urgency over the time that we're working with them. They have a ton on their plate. They might have some other fundraising deadline, or need to go door knocking, or something else be in their district. And so it's really on the team lead to maintain that sense of urgency, and keep in mind that, like I said earlier, this is really important, impactful work. We're basically doing digital consulting, and it's the work that we do is definitely impacting the outcomes of these elections. And so a big question that I think a lot of teams that I've spoken to have asked is like, okay, I understand that I need to create that urgency, and I need to tie it to the bigger picture, and how can I do that? And I think a really important aspect of this is when you join a project, of taking the time to research and understand your race, so that you can understand it in the concept, in the frame of flipping that chamber, defending that chamber, the dynamics of that state, and how that state plays into national politics. And once you can understand that, then you can tie that to these larger goals that we might have of, for example, flipping a state chamber, or defending one, or defending a vulnerable seat. We just came out of redistricting. So there's a lot of candidates that were helping this cycle who were in a safe district that wasn't as competitive as it is now, and we need to defend it. So I'm kind of just tying to the bigger meaning here. So those are the areas of responsibilities. Always like to, I've kind of alluded to all of these key deliverables for team leaders in some way, but I want to just make sure I kind of go over them again. So some key things that as a team lead, you would be responsible for doing and delivering is, one, creating a project plan at the beginning of the project. So for a website project, that might look like a series of deadlines and kind of tasks that need to be done to build a website, versus for an email or ads projects, it's more kind of like a content calendar type of thing. And we, of course, provide templates for doing those. So creating that, having a call with the campaign weekly and running that call, making sure that we are polished and we know how our programs are running and things like that. Checking in with your TFC partner. So you'll have a one-on-one with your state director on a weekly basis, and then also running that internal call with just the volunteer team, where you're kind of in the weeds, figuring out what needs to be done that week, looking at last week, and getting ready for the campaign call. And then, like I said, documenting and sharing findings. And then at the end of the project, debriefing, providing any feedback to TFC, encouraging the rest of the team to fill out our surveys that we like people to do, and then having a debrief call. And even more specifically, a lot of the to-do list items for a team lead are like right at the beginning. It's kind of a flurry of activity when you're a team lead and you start a project, and then it kind of evens out. So in those first few days, you'll join a project and you'll want to introduce yourself in Slack, make sure you have access to everything, and then immediately send off a doodle. We usually recommend using Doodle to get the team's availability for an external kickoff with the campaign, as well as an internal one before that, and scheduling those calls, running them, and then also, like I said, taking time to really research your candidate and your states, your chamber, making sure that you know that stuff and that you're able to kind of communicate the larger ties to things that might be impacting the volunteers on your team. And then lastly, creating that project plan that we talked about and getting that ready to communicate with the team. So we're getting close to the end. I wanted to quickly go over some campaign basics, and then we will wrap up and I can answer any questions. So just want to go over kind of, if you put on the helmet of a candidate, what are you focused on? What are your goals? So most of the cycle from now until September, October-ish is focused on campaigning. And within that, what does campaigning mean? It includes fundraising, so getting money that you can then put into other programs. Many of them are with TFC, so being able to spend more on digital ads or whatever it may be. And with those digital programs, also creating awareness. So making sure that voters in your district recognize your name and can pick your name out on a ballot ultimately. And then also persuading voters in your district to vote for you and communicating your platform. And then closer to the election really depends on early voting and how that works in your state. But closer to the election, usually in October, it gets more focused on get out the vote efforts. So that is reminding voters to have a voting plan, getting them to the polls, and just making that part of your digital strategy. And in terms of as a team lead, as a TFC volunteer, who you'll be working with. So there's obviously the candidates usually join our kickoff calls. Some will join all calls, but we try to get them always on our kickoff calls and then on a wrap-up call as well towards the end of the project. But really, as a team lead, you'll more so be working with campaign staff, and that's usually a campaign manager. So that's the person that's just kind of responsible for running the campaign behind the scenes. And then there's also on larger campaigns, sometimes other folks like a finance director or field director. You may work with them as well. So that's kind of the background of a campaign. I want to wrap up here just by saying that one, we are so thankful that all of you are interested in doing this work. It's super important, especially this year, as I'm sure you know. And just want to reiterate that this is being a team lead is a really big opportunity to make an electoral impact in a meaningful way. When we think about political volunteering, some people may do phone banking or door knocking, things like that. But this is really stuff where you're like a professional digital consultant for a campaign, and team leads are the crux of allowing us to do that work. So super grateful for our team leads. It's a really impactful role. I hope that this has been helpful in helping you all understand kind of what that commitment looks like and what the impact can be. And yeah, so next steps, apply for a project. We have several open right now, and I think all of the ones on our website right now are email projects. However, we, in a really early August, so in about 10 days, we know that we're going to launch a lot of ads projects, so you can keep an eye out for those. And then we'll have some website and other projects sprinkled in the coming months as well. So keep an eye on that page. You can just look at it on our website. You can also follow us on social media, where we often post new projects, and also make sure that you're getting our newsletter, where we include those as well. So thank you all again so much for your time. Any questions? Yeah, any questions? I haven't been watching the chat. So Patrick, do we have any good questions that I should answer?
We just got, let's see here, a couple questions in. How often do we see the scope of projects creeping larger, or candidates asking more than planned volunteers? That doesn't typically happen, unless, Amanda, you want to speak to that while I skip through these.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the scope of TFC projects is actually quite well defined. We set really clear expectations with campaigns up front. Sometimes they'll ask for a little bit more, and that's a situation where it's important for team leads to know what that agreement is for their specific type of project and to push back on it. And of course, if they need support in doing that, their state director is always there to help. But it's funny, actually, I would say that a lot of times the creeping up of scope can come from excited volunteers wanting to do a lot more so than I think from candidates. And that's also a responsibility of the team lead to make sure that first and foremost, we're delivering on the core goals of the program. And then if the team is really enthusiastic and really awesome and wants to do more than that, then we can definitely consider that.
We have one, I would say Jesse Carr, asking about shorter commitments available or other ways to accommodate unavailability during these 8-week blocks.
Yes, that's a good question. So I will say that for 8-week projects, if you have like a weekend trip here and there, that's usually okay. Definitely be upfront about it, but that can be okay. For generally shorter responsibilities, we do, again, it's not like our most common thing, but we do in our Slack instance. And if you would like access to our Slack, you can email me after this at amanda@techforcampaigns.org and I can add you. In Slack, we'll often ask for more like one-off work. It can be data analysis or like mocking up a design spec for some social media post or something like that. So if we do have those types of opportunities, we usually share it in our Slack community. It's a good question. And I'm seeing a question from Liz here too, which there was a lot of confusion for this. This is new for this cycle about there are several events in this training that you can RSVP for. Are they different or are they all the same? They are all the same. So if you came to this one, you're good. You don't need to come to any of the future ones. Those are for folks who weren't able to make it to this one and would like an alternative date. Just looking through here, how important is it to have experience in politics, digital ads, or email marketing to be a successful team leader? You definitely do not have to have experience in politics. Most of our volunteers do not have experience in politics. That's a-okay. You have to be willing to research your candidate and how the basics of how politics works for your race, but you don't need to have prior experience there. And then on digital ads, it's usually good to have some prior experience there, or at least like tangential experience. So working with performance marketers rather than like being an expert in it yourself. Most of the responsibility for all team lead roles lies in just keeping the team organized, keeping them on track, making sure that people are doing their job and communicating professionally with the campaign. But some experience on digital ads is helpful. For email marketing, I would say a lot of different backgrounds work well there. You don't have to have experience in email marketing. If our availability for synchronous work is strictly limited to outside of business hours, should the team lead role still be considered? So it can work. If you are, I would say for the kickoff meetings, those need to happen very fast. So if you're able to be flexible for those and then and do a little bit more than that in the first week just to get things ready. Usually after that, teams are able to find a time outside of work hours that will work for everyone, including their state director, who we always like to not ask them to do calls that are way too late, but they are okay with doing calls in the early afternoon, and they do that frequently, and that's okay. And so yeah, that's very common. Does it make sense? Patrick, are you seeing any other that are that you think are important to get answered? I think we're coming up on time.
Yeah, not right off. The only other thing I was going to plug is the blog post for the Anatomy of a Volunteer.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody who hasn't volunteered. So I'm going to drop that link. And it will take you through a little bit more of the process. And you can skim through it on your own as well.
Yeah, that's another, that gives some great information on how to make your application stand out and get actually selected for a project, because we open up our projects to everyone and then we go through them as if it were a job. We look at your LinkedIn. Patrick looks at your LinkedIn. He matches skills and backgrounds as best suited for the role on a first come, first served basis. Just going to rapid fire answer some of these and then we'll wrap up. Can you provide the Slack link? Yes, I will try to email that out to everyone who attended today. What platforms we use for email marketing? It does depend on the campaign, but we usually use NGP, which is a political tool, and we provide documentation on how to use that. It's pretty straightforward. It's like most other email tools. If you have a background in engineering or data analytics, does it make sense to be a team lead? So definitely recommend checking out the data analyst role on email projects. That's specifically focused on analysis, but we definitely have team leads who have a data background. If you've worked collaboratively with a lot of people, if you've led people and you're in data, that it can absolutely make sense and can, it's sometimes great to bring a data-driven approach to a project as a leader. So definitely don't hesitate there. All right. And like I said, you're welcome to email me any questions after this. My email is amanda@techforcampaigns.org. And yeah, just like I said, so grateful that you all could be here today. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing many of you on projects as a team lead. Take care.